Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to a live edition of the Press Pros Huddle Show. I'm Bruce Hooley. This is Sonny Folks, and we're here in beautiful Nutter Hardware in Upper Arlington, Ohio. We're getting ready for Justin Buttermore, the head coach at Upper Arlington. We got a seat for Coach Buttermore right here. We've got the custom Yeti coolers right here on the table.
We got all the paint you could ever want.
All the paint you could ever want, steel, power tools, Yeti, and here's the head man right here, Justin Buttermore, a head coach at UA, straight from practice. Golden Bears getting ready for St. Edward from Lakewood, Ohio on Friday night. And, man, you go right from the fire into the inferno with Pick Central and a boatload of D1 recruits to one of the legacy programs in the state of Ohio, St. Edward. I know you've been watching tape. What do you see when you look at St. Edward, Coach?
Well, incredibly well coached. We know about their tradition, and they are as advertised. They're really big up front. Still have tremendous athletes, play a little different style than Pick Central, but certainly a huge challenge just like them. They're a really good team, one of the odds-on favorites to win the state every year. So, we know what's ahead of us, but, our kids are excited for the challenge.
Well, it's been a great year for you guys. You're undefeated, 14-0. I know hearkening with a lot of people here in UA back to the last state championship team from UA led by Jeff Backus and Simon Frazier. That team, everybody expected to do what it did. I think this team was maybe a little bit of a surprise, even though we knew you had Carson Graysock. We didn't know about Sam Cannon. We didn't necessarily know about Simon Monin. We didn't know about some of your defensive players like Kuiper Lashetka.
Yeah, I mean, the kids have really, I hate to say overachieved, because we did have high expectations. I mean, we anticipated that we'd be a good team. To say that we thought we'd be sitting right here, I think that would probably be a little bit of an overstatement. But our kids have tremendous confidence each and every week, and they've gotten better and better. I mean, we started out with a big win against Reynoldsburg. We had to come back from 20 down, and then we kind of just got on a roll and really got better and better as the years gone on. So we've executed a really high level down the stretch, and it's led to some fun football.
I'm just interested to ask, which excites you more, just being with Bruce Hooley and me on the Huddle Show, or the prospect of Christmas shopping and Nutter Hardware when you get off camera?
Well, those are both big things for me. And I'm in here a lot. I live right here in UA, so I'm in Nutter Hardware a couple times a week anyway. So, but it's pretty exciting to be around you guys.
Well, and we know Chuck Nutter's a big supporter of UA athletics. He's a big supporter of UA. And that's a great guy, and we want to thank him for making Nutter Hardware and rental. Don't forget the rental aspect of Nutter Hardware available to us tonight. Before we get back to Coach Buttermore, a reminder, we're presented by visitcanton.com. State football Final Four is down to just that, the Final Four in each division. 28 teams left. Bears are one of them. In D1, there are 4 in each division, and the 2 that survive in each division will be headed to Canton. You should be headed to Canton, too. You should be headed to PressProsMagazine.com. Click on the visitcanton.com ads. You'll find all your lodging, dining, and entertainment options up there. Thanks to visitcanton.com for partnering with us. So let's talk about some of the St. Ed's threats. Very balanced football team. I look at them, they've thrown for over 2,000 and run for over 2,000, almost 5,000 total. I mean, that's a real challenge to deal with a team that's that balanced.
Yeah, and they really are. That's what stands out. I mean, their team, you can tell they want to run the football first. They're kind of like us. They're spread, but they want to run the football first. They've got a terrific tailback that has a tremendous burst. His acceleration really stands out on film. When he hits a hole, he takes off. And their quarterback is, I think, an underrated runner. He's very good, whether it's a scramble type situation in the pass game or some designed runs. He's really good. But they have equally talented wide receivers, and they really spread it out. There's not any one go-to guy. They have several guys, and the quarterback distributes it all over the place. So you got to defend the whole field when you're playing that.
One thing that I'm interested in asking, he just mentioned Simon Frazier, Jeff Backus, 2 great players who went on to play in the Big Ten. But generally, it has been a while since people had equated Arlington football with where you are right now. Tell me a little bit about what that culture or whatever that has been, what the process has been like to get it back to where you are right now. I know the cycle helps.
Right.
When you have the athletes, you can't go out there and put on the pads and the helmet. But tell me a little bit about what it's been like to bring that back.
Well, I think that's what's been special. I mean, UA has such great tradition, and not everybody can lean on tradition. There's a lot of schools around the state that can't lean on tradition. We can lean on tradition, and to have that tradition and have the community that surrounds one school. I think what's unique about UA is we are a one-school town, and that doesn't happen very often in Central Ohio. I know it does in other parts, but in Central Ohio, we're one of the few one-school towns. So we have tremendous community support. You've seen that grow and grow as the years gone on. Football's been kind of up and down over the last 20 years since those guys were around. But to see us as the year went on, to see the community and a lot of those former players reach out, It's really been a special thing, and we've brought those guys in to talk, and our kids are understanding of the tradition and the foundation that we have, and to bring it back and to get to this point and see the excitement has been really fun.
In this day and age, in this culture, it's kind of exciting. The kids would remember a Jeff Backus and Simon Frazier.
Yeah, it's funny. Those guys came in, Jeff Backus and Jesse Klein, who's a running back before him, who was a great running back as well. And those teams all got to the Final Four, to the state final, and and there were a couple other guys that came in too. And they mentioned during that talk that our kids weren't even born when they won that game. It's hard to think about that because it seems like yesterday for some of us, but but the kids know those names because of the tradition, because it's one school town. Our kids know those names. They know what that group did, or what those groups did, and so it was exciting to have them back.
But it's interesting to me. I was friends with Jesse's mom and dad, and I knew Jesse very well when he went to Ohio State, and to me, Carson Graysock and Jesse, they bear a physical resemblance and they bear a style resemblance as a running back. Both really fast, but both very physical guys too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Jesse was a very physical runner. I was just getting into coaching, just graduating college and getting into coaching when he was playing. And, I think he's underrated in hindsight because because Jeff came right after him. But Jesse was such an outstanding player. And like you said, very physical. And that's how Carson is. Carson wears on defenses, and just the way that Jesse wore on defenses. As the game goes on, those guys are tougher and tougher to convince yourself to tackle.
Well, and if Carson gets a step on you, you're not catching him. I mean, he's got speed. He's got breakaway speed.
Yeah, and I think that's, where a lot of people, for whatever reason, in the recruiting cycle have dropped the ball in the sense that they just don't believe that he's that fast. But you turn on the film against everybody we play, whether it's Kaufman last year with kids going to all kinds of Division I schools, or to Reynoldsburg or to Pickerington. I mean, he runs away or runs with everybody that we play. And, I think that a lot of people don't think that about him because he's such a powerful runner, but he's got a tremendous burst and tremendous speed as well.
The one thing I want to pursue on that end, Coach Buttermore, Upper Arlington with us, I saw a young man last week, Tariq Spikes from Winton Woods. If he's listed 5'7", 165, I think he's 5'5", 145. But a jitterbug and a jet. Nobody can catch the young man. I talked to him after the game. He's from Cincinnati. I said, "Is Coach Fickle on you?" "No, talk to him. And I find that sometimes these guys who are quote-unquote tweeners, or they don't fit exactly the physical characteristics that the coaches want their tailback to be, X height, X weight, or whatever. And you may have some guys like that. Carr may be a guy like that. Because I'll tell you, I've seen your team play, and you have football players on your team. They might not be the classic size, but man, they can play the game.
Yeah, and I think that's why everybody kind of maybe took us for granted and maybe didn't think we were as good, or didn't have a shot last week, or even against Reynoldsburg week 12. We don't always look the part. I mean, we are not real big up front. Our skill guys aren't extremely big. But you said it, they're football players. They're kids, when you turn on the film, they're great football players. They have good football IQ. They understand how to play the game. They play the game at a high level with great effort. And, I think their athleticism is underrated because their size is maybe, like you said, not the stereotypical size for big-time players.
Coach, I want you to take a moment and talk to me about Simon Monty. I know he's got family back in Miami County watching, this program tonight, and I'm impressed by kids like Simon as being a facilitator, not necessarily a guy that is one-dimensional, that throws the ball, has to throw the ball all the time, but gets the ball into the hands of the people who make you guys win. And I think that's what really defines being a quarterback, particularly in this culture of football that we're playing today. Tell me a little bit about, that's such an important position on the field.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the point guard in basketball. I mean, that guy's job is not to make all the plays, but it's to get the ball in the hands of the guys that can make the plays. And he's a kid that broke his collarbone week 2 last year, and so he only started 2 games. And I don't think there were necessarily high expectations from some people for him because he just didn't have much experience. But he's one of those that has played better and better as the year has gone on. A kid that's really smart. He really got into the playbook in preseason and won the job. And he's gone out and really distributed the ball well. He's made good decisions. People talk, obviously we know about Carson, but I think the biggest difference between last year and this year is our balance as an offense. We have the ability to do something other than hand it off to Carson, and that makes Carson all that much more effective. So, that's been a big deal for us. We've distributed the ball really, really well, and Simon's a huge part of that.
This is a fun ride to take with any team. It has to be an especially fun ride to take with your son playing on football.
Yeah, I mean, it's special. It really is. I mean, I feel very blessed to have the opportunity to go through this with him. I mean, obviously it's great as a coach, no matter the situation, but to be able to do it with your son is a special time. We've had some memories that certainly will last forever.
Let's go back and talk about that Pick Central game a little bit. You're playing a team that I think 5 in a row won the regional, loaded with D1 talent. Sonny Styles, Gillison, CJ Doggett. They're loaded. And the general consensus would be you don't want to play that game any longer than you have to. You go to triple overtime, and if you told me you were going to win in triple overtime, I would have believed it, but I would have believed the score would have been like your Reynoldsburg game, a 42-41 game. To win that game 21-14, I don't think people think of defense when they think of Upper Arlington, but you had some big plays on defense by Kuiper Lashutka at crunch time, and to just hang in there with a team that a lot of people would say, well, they've got a big athletic advantage over UA.
Yeah, I agree. I think most people thought the longer the game played out, the worse it was going to be for us. I mean, they were from the start, they were going to try to lean on us. They had a lot of bigger bodies. They were going to try to lean on us and wear us down, and that was their goal the entire game. And the defense just continually rose to the occasion and made play after play, even when it didn't look great. It was 4th and 1. They had the ball at the 1-yard line, and I don't think they were going to stop them in that situation with their size advantage. But our kids just played with such tremendous effort. Like I said, Kuiper had some big plays, and really I could go all the way down the line on defense. So many guys made big plays throughout the night to get us off the field. I think they were 1 for 6 on 4th downs, and that was such a huge thing because they were in our territory several times in those situations, and we just found a way to make a play and get off the field.
I want to talk to you a little bit about St. Ed's from the standpoint of coaches that told me before about the challenge of playing an unfamiliar opponent. Now, you play in a league with 32 other teams, so I know you know everybody in the OCC and what their tendencies are and their personnel and their coaching styles and personalities and all of that. What's it like, and how difficult is it to go all the way to Cleveland and play somebody like that you're not familiar with? Somebody told me one time the biggest thing to coach in a week like this is to get over the fear of the unknown.
Yeah, I do think it's unique. I think it's what's special about the playoffs too. You get to play some teams that you aren't familiar with, but it is unique. I mean, you can't rely on previous knowledge, previous games. You have to rely on really what you see on film, and sometimes film can be deceiving. But I think that plays both ways. I mean, certainly, we're unfamiliar with them in a lot of ways. They're unfamiliar with us. I mean, you watch the film, you try to diagnose it the best you can and try to evaluate their personnel the best you can, knowing that when you get in the game, there's going to be some adjustments that have to be made based on what you saw on film.
How much do you take into account of strength of schedule, too, when you look at a team like them? Now, obviously, they play some schools up there that are very talented. They have great legacies in football, but how much does that really mean?
I put a lot of stock in it. I mean, I think it's important who you play and to see how you play against those teams, and especially a team like St. Ed's that week after week has to line up and play like that. It's one thing getting up for a big game every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. It's another thing when you're playing Hoban, Massillon, Moeller, St. X, or St. Ignatius week after week. And so I think it says a lot to their consistency and their toughness when you can do that week after week and continue to win.
Sure. Coach, we'll let you go with this one. And we appreciate your time very much. Sonny and I are fortunate at Press Pros. We this website started in the Midwest Athletic Conference, where the Versailles, Minsters, St. Henry's, Marion Locals, winning state championships, Coldwater a lot. And the thing that's really special about that is not just the winning, but it's the community and how the community supports. And you mentioned it earlier, Arlington is unique in the OCC, where there are 2 Worthington high schools. There's, Victorville, there's 3 in Hilliard, there's 3 in Dublin. You're the only game in town here in UA, and this has always been, having lived here, I know it's a very tight-knit community. What's it like at school? What's it like in the community this week in a place like this, Nutter Hardware, where people see you and they know you're the coach, and I'm sure they're expressing, their gratitude for a great season, their excitement for what you and the Bears have done this year?
Well, I love it. I mean, I love, like I said, I love being in a one school town where people do know. People are all pulling in the same direction. I mean, I think that's the greatest thing. From our youth league, we have a bunch of people that are all pulling for UA football, not one of the 2 UA schools or anything else. They're pulling for UA football. And we see those guys around town. They see our players around town. Everybody has bought into our program, and I think when you have one school and one town and one team, I just think it's special and unique in Division I, especially in Central Ohio.
Well, Coach, our Steve Blackledge will be there Friday night. We wish you well against St. Ed's. It's a tall task, but you've gotten it done 14 times this year. We'll hope for 15. We'll hope to see you in Canton in 2 weeks.
I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot. Justin Buttermore,
Great to meet you.
joining us
Justin.
here.
Thank you very
Nutter
much.
Hardware. Now he's going to go do some Christmas shopping, and we're going to turn our attention to some of our other games. Thank you so much,
All right,
Coach. As we've got plenty of other games, we have 3 MAC teams in the Final Four in their respective divisions, and we can't say we're surprised by that.
Or anybody.
I actually would say that I'm surprised we don't have 4.
Yeah.
I thought as I watched Milton Union, I know they were seeded 7th, but a 7th seed, I think Winton Woods is a 7th seed, and they've gotten there. Tip playing really well. I'm not the least bit surprised that we have 3 teams. We have Versailles in D5. We have the defending state champion Coldwater in D6, and we of course have, as Sonny said, the 11-time champion Marion Local in D7. And if we didn't have Marion Local, we'd have St. Henry because they beat St. Henry in the regional final.
I think what it says is certification of what I said before the season even began in August. Someone said characterize what football is going to be like in West Central Ohio this year. And I thought about it at the time, knowing what happened in 2020. And I said, well, I think the rich are going to get richer. Mm-hmm. And I said, you may not see as many teams competitive this year as in past years, but you're going to see more good teams. I mean, really come to the surface, like the cream rises to the top. It's no surprise to me. And I told people before the season, look for St. Henry to make some impact this year.
Because you told me they've recycled. Their athletes have cycled through.
Exactly. And they've got that dynamic leader and Owen Layfeld, who at 6'2" and 215 is going to get the ball 30 times or capable of getting it. You got that going for you. I think people have waited for years for the emergence of the Versailles Tigers again. I can't, the people across the state, and I know there's people in southeastern Ohio that's watching us tonight. I know there's people in northeast and northwestern Ohio that's watching us tonight who are familiar with the Versailles legacy, particularly in Ironton, where they met Versailles several years ago. And I don't know if it was a regional final. I know it was in Dayton, and I was at that game when Al Hetrick and Bob Letcher were the coaches, respective coaches. And certainly Versailles has come back to the pack this year in terms of
the elite pack.
The elite pack in terms of challenging for a state tournament. Marion Local is going to be there. Coldwater is going to be there. Somebody said the other day, how many titles has Coldwater really won? Well, they've won 7, but more impressively, overall, they've won 7 of the last 12 or 13 titles in either Division 5 or 6. They won 55% of them, since John Reed was there as coach, and I think that was like 2005 when they won their first one with John, and that's 55%.
That's pretty good
of the titles. Well, Marion has done the same thing.
Yeah,
they've won 11 titles in like 22 years.
What was the stat? Blackie had a stat on.
They're 88 and 12.
88 and 12 in the playoffs.
In the playoffs.
All time at Marion Local.
So again, going back to what I started with here, when you take those teams, when you take Milton Union, who we knew were going to be good this year because of Blake Newmeyer and Blake Broomball.
Well, I would love to have seen Milton Union play Eaton with a healthy Michael Eaton.
Yes.
Blake Newmeyer was a warrior that night, as was Blake Broomball. All the Bulldogs played really well. That's a very winnable game. And just having that extra set of fresh legs. That's their leading rusher, Michael Elam. Now, Blake Newmeyer was their leading rusher last year, but Michael Elam, to not have him in that game, you tell me he didn't make a 2-point difference in that game? I think Milton's still playing after that week if he's healthy.
You got to talk about Pickwick too. The best team that they've had and the best success they've had since 2006 when they won the Division II state title with Brandon Saint and Justin Him and all that, Phil Collier and all that bunch of guys, Snyder and all that bunch of great players that Bill Neese had then. Tip City. I know that they feel like they have just begun to scratch the surface of what they want to be in the next 3, 4, 5 years. That's a program that 3 or 4 years ago, they had 45, 50 kids. in uniform. This year they dressed 80 to 90 kids in uniform in those top four, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior, and they think their best days are ahead of them. They finished 10-4 this year, and were a tough out every week.
Yes, they were.
And so, when you look at those, and you look at those teams going back to the MAC, some teams that I think are going to be very good in the future, like New Bremen, defending state champion, got knocked out this year, but possibly the most dynamic player in the league, and Dave Holman, their quarterback. You look at an Anna team that had a very good year and a very good run in the playoffs this year, good postseason. That league is going to get nothing but better in the future. So going back, I think you're going to see more and more of, if you want to characterize it as the rich getting richer, I don't know that that's a bad thing in West football and West Central Ohio.
Well, we're going to get to Versailles in a minute. I'll just make one quick comment that I believe Milton Union this year is Versailles next year. Because if you look at Brett Pierce's team, he's got Michael Elam back. He's got Blake Broombaugh back. He's got the really good tight end defensive back, whose name I'm sorry I don't remember, who had 4 interceptions in one of their playoff games. I mean, they have a lot of their main guys back. And when you looked at Versailles a year ago, after they lost to Roger Bacon, they lost in a really close playoff game, same as Milton this year to Eaton. And all those guys, Carson Bay and Jack Osborne and on and on and on, thought to themselves, that's a game we could have won. We're going to win those kinds of games next year. And now you see Versailles in the D5 semifinals, having played as a 5 seed, the number 2, the number 1, and shut them both out.
Mm-hmm.
So Ryan Jones has Versailles playing, and I'll tell you where they're winning. The Tiger Ball fans love it because they are moving people off the line. They played Preble Shawnee, and I got to shout out Preble Shawnee. They played that game. They had 29 guys in uniform. 29 in the D5 game. That's amazing. But their coach said, we couldn't handle them up front. That's a complete football team. And he also noted, and I would keep this in mind if I'm Harvest Prep playing Versailles on Saturday night at London, he said a very fast football team.
Yeah.
I think people look at Versailles and they see Tarantayo and they see, Kanapke, and they see these guys on the line and they move people and they'll run a 10-yard quarterback sneak on you. And you think, well, that's all they are is power. No. They've got speed. Eli McEldowney has speed. Carson Bay has speed. Jack Osborne has speed. Landon Henry has speed. They're a fast football team. They're playing very well. I've not seen Harvest Prep. I'm going to have to see the team that gets in front of Versailles getting to the state finals.
Well, another thing about Versailles that's impressive is what I just asked Justin Buttermore a moment ago, the fact of coaching kids beyond the fact of a team that you're not familiar with. I don't care who you are. I don't care how much coach speak you've got. There's always a little bit of intimidation when you're playing somebody that is totally unfamiliar to you. You don't know about their size, their speed. You see them on film, but you don't know anything about their personality. Yeah. And I think it's important when you play in a league with other teams, you get to know an opponent's personality just from being across the line of scrimmage from.
Yeah.
After you hit somebody 2 or 3 times, you notice when they get up off the ground how quick they get up and what their attitude and personality is. And that's impressive to me, what Ryan has done. As you said, to shut out those 2 teams that you're totally unfamiliar with, and you just go out and take care of business. You play your game.
Yeah, absolutely. And Taft and Preble Shawnee are 2 very physical football teams, and Taft's also a very fast team. I think Taft and Harvest Prep, in terms of talent, are going to be very similar. So I like Versailles to get to the state finals in Division 5. All right, let's talk a little bit about our D6 team. Chip Otten, just his phrase this year is spread the wealth. They lose Miles Blasingame. They lose Zach McKibben.
Right.
I wondered who's going to play quarterback. You told me Marcel Blasingame was going to play quarterback. He's not playing quarterback. He's really good in the slot. And they got a young man in Dellinger who can really sling it around. I don't know how many touchdown passes they had in their regional final win, but they are really rolling. And you talk about a team that's been through the wars. Their 2 losses are impressive football teams. One to Marion Local, is the other one to Versailles?
No, they didn't play Versailles this year. I'd have to go back. I'd have to go back and look at the schedule. No, they don't play Milton.
No, it'd be somebody in the MAC. St. Henry.
St. Henry. I was at that game.
Yeah, St. Henry.
That's what
it was. Yeah. So there's a final 8 team that they're playing.
Here's a team that whatever he's got at Coldwater, everybody else wants some of.
You know the old saying about Bum Phillips had an old saying about Don Shula. Remember what it was? He'll take his and beat yours, and he'll take yours and beat his.
Yeah.
And that is Chip Otten. That is Chip Otten.
The thing about him is, and we were talking about Reese Dellinger, you just mentioned him, the quarterback this year, and I saw them early, and it's like not even the same player that he is right now. More confident, a facilitator, like we were just talking about with Simon Monin. And Chip does such a great job. His coaching staff does such a great job of, as you say, spread the wealth. This year, no, he has said that for years, because that is their whole mantra there.
Yeah.
We've got 6 guys. You take away our 5 interior linemen. We got 6 guys there. Do you have 6 people that can cover those 6 guys? In high school football, not very often.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally, they've got kids that can run and get it, and they put so much pressure on defenses to adjust to that, because how many times are you going to see a team like that during the course of a high school football season? So that's what, and they're playing at a very high level, plus they're playing healthy right now. I hate to tell that to next man up. I guess that West Jefferson that's playing them, and you know, we had Coach Fisher on a few weeks ago, and very impressive man, has done a superb job there with that program, been there a long time. But when you play Spectre of Coldwater and the way they play, and knowing that they're healthy, playing with that much confidence, that's a nightful.
It is, and I know a lot of people are going to look at the West Jefferson Coldwater matchup, and they're going to say, well, West Jefferson had trouble with Mechanicsburg, and Coldwater just took it to Mechanicsburg. Not a close game. Ergo, this is not going to be a game. I would not endorse that idea at all, because I felt like Coldwater would have a pretty easy time with Mechanicsburg, because when you play Mechanicsburg, you know it's pretty much 95% run. With West Jefferson, it's 95% pass, but that's harder to play all over the field. And they really do a good job of distributing the football. So I would expect that to be a game that is going to have a lot of scoring in it. I expect Coldwater to win the game, but I don't think it's just easy to say, well, Coldwater beat Mechanicsburg, Mechanicsburg beat West Jeff pretty handily, and so that's going to go to Coldwater. It's not even going to be a football game. I expect that to be a game that is in doubt into the third quarter. I don't know about fourth quarter, because I think Coldwater is that good.
I think this also you have to take in consideration all the number of coaches that say it's important for us to get off to a fast start.
Yeah.
We need to get up on them. Team that starts first, starts fast, gets up, scores first, gets that confidence, gets that good feeling about the way you're playing. Not so fast. Whoever said,
not so fast, my friend.
Yeah, Lee Corso. Not so fast, my friend, when you're playing Coldwater, because I don't think that intimidates them.
No,
I don't think they bother. They're a very patient team. They understand. Here's another thing that Chip says: we got a toolbox, and it's full of tools. We got plenty of things in there. They're not going to panic by getting down a touchdown or two. They're going to come back in the second quarter, and the next thing you know, they're going to suck you in, throw it over the top. They've got just plenty of weapons and plenty of kids who are accustomed to making plays. Not just that once in a lifetime. They're accustomed to playing that way.
Well, we saw that last year in a state championship game, which is one of the better state championship games, or better football games, period, at any level that I've ever covered. Coldwater against New Middletown Springfield, and Bo Brungard from New Middletown Springfield was phenomenal in that game. Their quarterback, he's on his way to Youngstown State. He'll play with Josiah Medley of Piqua at Youngstown State. But in that game, Coldwater was down repeatedly and down at the end, and they found a way to get down the field and tie the game and then win the game in regulation thanks to a really clutch punt return by Zach McKibben. But there you're talking about that, not panicking, keeping your mind on your business, running what you run, having faith in the system. Coldwater did that, and they may see New Middletown Springfield again if Coldwater gets past West Jeff, because New Middletown Springfield and Cary are the teams in the other 2 Division VI semifinal.
Plus, year in and year out, coaches talk about special teams. I defy anybody that, going back 10 years, has had better special teams play than Coldwater. Yeah. They've always got a dependable kicker. They've always got a dependable punter. They have so many ways, the little things there, that they coach up and do well.
Speaking of special teams, Chase McEldowney of Versailles has missed 1 extra point all season. One. That's amazing. That's a big weapon. Milton has a really good kicker. He had a tough night on a very wet field against Eaton, and that was the difference in that football game. In D5, Versailles' other two semifinalists, besides, obviously Versailles is playing Harvest Prep 10-2, Versailles 13-1. Ottawa Glandorf and Kirtland is the other semifinal, and we talked with Coach Buttermore of Upper Arlington when he joined us earlier about these legacy programs, these name programs. Marion Local is 1 in D7, Coldwater is 1 in D6. Kirtland is clearly 1 in D5. Versailles had that amazing run years ago where they won 54 consecutive games. I think it's the third longest streak in Ohio high school football history. Kirtland right now is sitting on a 54-game winning streak. They are the regional champion for the 10th time in the last 11 years. And if Versailles gets past Harvest Prep, which I've said I expect that to happen, I fully expect them to run into the Kirtland Hornets and Tiger Laverty in the state finals.
Well, the one thing you talk about, the little things that help you win football games. If you have missed one extra point throughout the year, it tells you about attention to detail, about the snap, the hold, and protection for the kick. So they don't miss a thing under Ryan Jones. But I tell you, when you talk about Kirtland, that's an impressive group because not only do they have speed, not only do they have size, they have a tremendous culture of football there. And I've talked to you so many times about culture at Piqua, at Marion, at Coldwater, about these schools that year in and year out, people say, well, what's new? They're good again. The rich get richer. The only way you get richer in football or any kind of sport like that is develop that culture that somebody wants to be a part of. People, it's not a matter of necessarily recruiting talent to want to play in a place like that. It is attracting kids, even in your own home district, from second, third, fourth grade. I want to be a part of that. That's something really good and really cool. I want to be a part of it. And that's what Tiger's got. He's been there a while, so they have consistency, they have stability, and those kids know what the expectations are. There's nobody who starts playing football there in the 5th and 6th grade and says, "Oh, this is not for me. This is tougher than I thought it was going to be." They know when they start out.
They do, and you mentioned getting a big payoff, and in a football program, it's really not a lot different than it is with your retirement account. You have to invest to be able to withdraw. And I want to shout out here something that I saw that I wrote about on the site after Piqua's victory prior to its regional final loss. It was really a neat image to see the Piqua Indians players come out of the locker room and come over on a rainy night, a cold night. Let me get to the bus. Let me get to my food. Let me get out of this weather. They all came over and gave Coach Bill Neese a slap on the back, a punch in the shoulder, a hug around the neck. And I just reflected on that as I saw it, and I thought about all the coaches that we cover and how they invest in their teams. And the danger in naming them, we talked about a lot of them. And I know people think it's all, well, sure, they got a good team and it's all about being good. And if you're not good, there are a lot of 5-5. There are some 3-7 coaches who have the exact same investment in their players and whose players have the exact same affection for them that Piqua will have for a Bill Neese, or Coldwater will have for Chip Otten, or Marion kids will have for Tim Goodwin. And just as a dad, and you had kids and played sports years ago, mine are playing now. It's just, I just want to tell parents, if you have a coach like that, that's not normal and that's not automatic. That's not guaranteed. So make sure you see that, make sure you appreciate that, and it would be nice if you let those coaches know that.
And don't misunderstand the coach that told me one time, my high school baseball coach took me out of a game when I was a sophomore, and I wasn't pitching very well, and he came out to the mound to get the ball, and he says, "Before you leave here," he says, "take a look at this circle we're standing on," because he says, "Take a good look," because he said it's going to be a long time before you see it again. Now, there's a lot of people who would say that's negative, that's cruel, that's demeaning. But I'm going to tell you why Jim Hardman lit a fire under me when he said that, because I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything about it at the time. I thought, I'll show you.
Or that it makes you realize that that's a privilege to be out there. Well, you're not owed that.
But I just wanted to work that much harder to get there. And I went home and I told my dad, and you always think your parents or somebody are going to feel sorry for you and say, "Well, I'll call the school board and I'll get to the bottom of this." My dad just looked at me and said, "Well, it sounds to me like if you want to play, you better get better." And that's exactly why Coach told me that. And I'm telling you, that has served me well for the last 50 some odd years, because I never forgot that. And it doesn't matter whether it's baseball or business It doesn't matter whether it's badminton or whatever you're doing. It makes you want to be the best you can be every time you get up in the morning, put your clothes on, and go to work.
Yeah.
And parents, I'm telling you, like Bruce said, you have to appreciate somebody that can get a message to your kids that way that maybe you can at home, because you live with them, they see you every day, they take you for granted, and kids take parents for granted because it's just convenient. And
well, those other voices that speak into a kid's
exactly
life
right.
can make a big difference. And what I appreciated about what I said in my story about Coach Neese, but it's really more about all coaches who invest like that, regardless of results, regardless of championships or anything, is that when you do that with kids, you give them a chance to be better employees, to be better friends, to be better husbands, to be better at everything. And give them that chance.
And don't forget this: when you're at home and you sit down there and have that CTJ talk to your kids, they know you're not there. They're not going to be embarrassed.
Yeah.
When you're out in competition like that, you have a chance, if you don't play well on a particular day, of being embarrassed. And that's the one thing where coaches have the advantage over parents, because there's much more at stake. You've got people there watching, and they're going to remember, and they're going to talk about it, and no kid wants that.
No.
So if a coach can instill that in you, to go out there and give your absolute best every day for the rest of your life, that's priceless.
It is. We want to thank the kind folks here at Nutter Hardware who hosted us tonight. We wanted to do a show on location. We thought it'd be a great time to get one of our Central Ohio coaches on. Justin Buttermore, Upper Arlington, kind enough to join us. If you missed Coach Buttermore at the top of the show, you can watch the replay on the Press Pros Magazine Facebook page, on my social media channels on Twitter, on the Press Pros Magazine Twitter page. Follow us on Instagram. We are on Instagram at press_pros, PROS. Follow us if you're an athlete. We are increasing our content on Instagram. We'll have polls. We hope to soon have a High School Athlete of the Week contest on there. So we want you to follow us on Instagram. And if you're in Upper Arlington, come into Nutter Hardware and Rental. It's a phenomenal hardware store. I know the owner, Chuck, and Chuck decided that, hey, I'm a handyman and I'm tired of driving out of my neighborhood to go get what I need. I'm going to have the kind of hardware store that I want to go to, and he does. It's a phenomenal store, and we appreciate him playing host to us tonight. Also, we're sponsored by VisitCanton.com, our presenting sponsor. State Championship weekend is right around the corner. Get your hotel. We have ours. Get your dining reservations. We have ours. We'll see you at the Hall of Fame. We'll see you at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. We appreciate our partnership with VisitCanton.com. Click on those ads in the PressProsMagazine.com content for a discount offer to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we'll see you up there on Championship weekend in Canton. All right, let's move to the Division VII semifinals. Marion Local, Hopewell Loudon. Marion Local has been on a mission since losing on a block punt last year to New Bremen. New Bremen went on, won the state championship. Marion Local toughed out a second win over St. Henry in the regional finals. Peyton Oddie getting it done defensively. They're getting it done. Hopewell Loudon is an explosive offense. The other two teams in the semis, Warren JFK, the team that New Bremen beat last year for the state title with a running clock, by the way, and 13-1 Newark Catholic, a team out of the past, one of those programs that's won a lot of state championships over the years at Newark Catholic. But Marion Local has been, as I said, on a mission. They're very focused. They're 14-0. And I love how Tim Goodwin talks about how they're appreciating the ride that they are on, because they saw last year how quickly that can be taken away from them.
The thing about Marion that always impresses me is how they've won 11 titles in 21 years or something like that since 2000. They never take any of them for granted. How you maintain that kind of hunger in the midst of that kind of success is really impressive. And when you look at this year's team, I can count on one hand the number of times that they have made mistakes over the last 20 years that I've watched them that has cost them an opportunity for a title. I mean, you go back a few years ago when they fumbled the ball going in for the clinching touchdown against Kirtland. Fumbled the ball on the 1 yard line. Kirtland recovers it, takes it 98 yards and scores. In the second half, totally flips the momentum of the game and comes back and beats Marion Local, or they would have that 12th title right now. You mentioned the loss to New Bremen last year. I can't remember the last time that I saw a Marion team have a blocked punt that cost them like that. But punt and recovery for a touchdown against New Bremen that cost them that particular game, flipped the momentum in that game. That's what, besides the fact they don't take it for granted, they're so well coached, the little things. They have played through injury this year, and some significant injuries to their two primary primary running backs, and yet they are so resourceful and so deep. And you go back to that culture of that kids want to be a part of and commit to and work hard, and they've got the replacement running backs and a Dylan Fleck or a Drew Louser, some kids like that can step in and say next man up and say it with some conviction and mean. So their defense has been supreme and superb again. They've got three of the best linebackers you're ever going to see in Division V or VI or VII football. And, of course, they've got Tim Goodwin there who has seen everything that is there is nothing, I think, on the football field that he hasn't seen or is not prepared to prepare for and coach against. So I don't know a lot about Hopewell Loudon. I know they've scored a lot of points. You brought that attention to me. They're 13-1. Obviously, they've got talent. Obviously, I don't know that much about their strength of schedule, but when you're 13-1, you're beating the teams. If you're not beating good teams, you're beating the teams you're supposed to beat, and you're beating them soundly and confidently. So again, they have met teams like that in the state semifinals, from that part of the state, and it doesn't ever seem to bother the Marion Flyers.
No, they are a team that is the epitome of a no excuses team. With the injuries they've had in the backfield, a lot of teams would be like, oh, well, we can't win. We don't have this guy. We don't have that guy. That's not in their mindset. It's not in their mentality. And I think that game last year against New Bremen was a shock to the system. None of us expected that. They are playing very well. They are finding a way. Peyton Notty's a very special player. We'll see if Marion Local can get to that state championship. We'll see if they can get over the hump and break that tie that they have with Cleveland St. Ignatius. That game is Saturday night, and that game is in Lima.
That game is at Lima Senior Stadium.
Lima Senior. Yep, the Versailles game is at London. The Coldwater game
at Piqua, Alexander Stadium.
Piqua. So we have those three covered, and Upper Arlington is playing against St. Edward at Arlen Field in Mansfield. Right. So those are our 4 teams that we have left in the state semifinals. Congratulations to all of them. Congratulations to the teams that got to the Final 8, because that is no mean feat as well. Obviously, Ohio State and Michigan on Saturday afternoon. Sonny and Mark Snyder will be staffing that one for us. And we always have some reader input. You have some letters from readers.
Before we get to that, though, I want you to go back and tell me. I asked you a couple days ago, and you covered Ohio State football for 20 years as a Cleveland Plain dealer. So there is nobody more prepared to give a scouting report or what you feel is an unction that you might have about the outcome of this game. You said to me the other day, well, you tell me what you said to me the other day about.
Well, I don't remember what I said to you the other day, but
well, it wasn't going to be close.
I know what I said on my podcast is that I don't expect the game to be close. I expect it to be low 40s to low to mid 20s in score. Ohio State will win the football game, and the reason I say that is because if you look at Michigan, would Hassan Haskins or Blake Corum start at running back for Ohio State? I don't think they would. How many Ohio State receivers would be the number 1 receiver at Michigan? I think Olave would be, Garrett Wilson would be, Jackson Smith and Jigba would be. I think Jim Harbaugh would love to have Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison and a couple of guys who never see the field at Ohio State. I think Michigan is about the same as Ohio State on defense, but Ohio State puts such pressure on you to cover the whole field vertically and horizontally throwing the football. And C.J. Stroud is just on a roll right now. And also, when you've beaten a team 8 straight times and you've scored, 50-plus the last 2 years, there's not a kid on that team in a Michigan uniform that's ever had anything close to a successful game against Ohio State. And I know you can say it's a different year, and I know you can watch film and you can believe and you can hype yourself up. You have to go out there and do it against that team wearing a uniform that has owned you. And I just don't see the kind of talent on the Michigan side of the field that can compete with Ohio State. I think Michigan goes in hoping we're in the game and hoping we can find a way to win. And Ohio State goes into the game thinking, we're going to win this game, we're going to win it handily.
Or do you believe at all in the law of averages?
I don't. I believe in the law of talent and coaching. I think Ohio State is very well coached and extremely talented.
That may be true, but you always have to respect the law of averages. And, at some point, Michigan's not a bad football team.
I don't know that I agree with that statement.
They're not a bad football team.
I think Michigan State's a bad football team.
Yeah, but
I think the Big Ten aside, I think there are 2 Big Tens. There's Ohio State, and then there's the rest of the Big Ten. And it's aggravating to me as a college football fan, to see Cincinnati not get any credit for beating a team like SMU the way they beat them. And I think SMU and Michigan State is a pick 'em game depending on where the game is played. Michigan State gets a lot of credit for being a great football team because they're in the Big Ten. That's why they're getting the branding they get. But Ohio State beat them like a rented mule. And I just think that Michigan State team beat Michigan.
Well, I'll guarantee you, the law of averages notwithstanding, I don't expect Ryan Day to take this game for granted. I don't think any of the Ohio State kids will either. But at some point, the worm is going to turn, and I think you have to have some respect for that. You have to respect every opponent every day you go out and play, and that possibility is always there. The unforeseen.
Nothing I said is meant to convey at all the idea that Ohio State doesn't respect Michigan. It's meant to convey that I don't respect their football team this year. I have a lot of good friends up there who work up there. I would like to see that rivalry become competitive.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are a lot of Ohio State fans who say, "Oh, well, how can you say that as an Ohio State fan?" Because the rivalry is not any fun as it is currently constituted, nor was it any fun from the late 1980s through 2001. It is not a fun. It is not a fun rivalry when one team dominates it, because when one team dominates it, it is not a rivalry.
It is a far cry from what it was from 68 to 78 when Woody and Bo were both there.
What was from 68 to late 1980s, you did not know who was going to win the game when it was played. And it was, they used to say all the time, so much I got sick of hearing it, but it was true. It's not true anymore. You could throw the records out because you could see a 9-3 Michigan team beat a 12-0 Ohio State team. Or you could see a Michigan team in 1968 beat Ohio State. You do not see that anymore. And until I see it again, I will not expect to see it again. Reader Speaks.
Reader Speaks. 2 or 3 letters, and we always appreciate people who take the time to write to us. And it's ironic that Coach Buttermore was here, and I'm kind of glad he's not here, because we got a letter here from Mark from Upper Arlington, November the 16th, not too long ago, like last week, who wrote to tell us. He said, "I'm a UA grad from the 80s, and I want to thank you guys and your website for writing about Bears football. And while I write this, I also would like to say, would it kill the Dispatch and the rest of Columbus media to do the same? Seriously, this is the best thing that's happened to Upper Arlington for a generation, and no one barely talks about it." I'm not sure that that's true, that anyone barely talks about it, but we did talk about it a little bit last week or the week before, perhaps, about getting out of the habit of winning and how people can take that for granted. And you can fade in to the background when you're being compared to the Dublins and the Westervilles and the Hilliards and the other teams in the OCC.
Yeah, and I think, too, we're just in a different media age. Back when we had robust newspaper coverage of all high school sports, you could expect to get your team covered when you had a great year. That's just not how it is anymore. And even if you do get covered now, if you're not a paying customer to navigate through the paywall at the Dispatch, you're not going to get that story. You're always going to get that story on PressProsMagazine.com. We're not a newspaper. We don't attempt to be a newspaper. We don't have the staff of a newspaper in the heydays of newspapers. We are a magazine. We cover and feature certain games, but the games we do unlike anyone else. And so we're glad you love our coverage. And now that we're down to very few teams left, we'll be on all 4 of these teams for as long as they're in.
So, Mark, appreciate your taking the time to write to us, and I hope that salves your wound a little bit there. From Janelle via Facebook, who wrote to us this week, "I loved your coverage of the state volleyball tournament and congratulate all the teams who participated. I am, however, disappointed with the OHSAA and the presentation procedure of how they awarded the trophies. I thought it was very impersonal, and I got the feeling that there was no knowledge about the schools who participated, or at least the circumstances surrounding their season." And she goes on to talk about the situation with New Knoxville's coach and losing her husband. And she said, "What I felt was, how quick can we get these people out of here? We got a schedule to keep. It could have been so much better and so much more sincere. I would like to see that again in the future." And Janelle, to that point, I think I said this last week because someone else wrote with a very similar sentiment about the tournament. What you're missing is the personality of a Dan Ross, who is the former commissioner of the OHSAA, or Jerry Snodgrass, who was the executive director up until last year. And those guys made it their personal mission to know the state of Ohio and the communities well enough that they could get out there and make that presentation in person with great personality, and call upon the communities and talk about the barbershops and the grocery stores and the watering holes and the restaurants and the places like that. And yeah, that did add and lend a lot of personality to the procedure. It made it a more personal thing. And I would also say that my sense is that the OHSAA right now is operating with far less staff than what they did when Dan Ross and Jerry Snodgrass were on the scene. So I don't know what their plans are for the future. I've never asked, but we were there this year. I know that it was a public address announcement in terms of the trophy presentation, and I would expect that to get better in the future. And again, thanks for your letter, and appreciate you taking the time to reach out to us. And
yeah, I think it's also, you have to understand that Jerry Snodgrass is a unique guy. He's just one of those good guys that had a lot of friends, and he engages with people. And it's not Doug Ute's fault if Doug Ute's personality is not such, or his life experiences are not such, that he's been to every little hamlet and village in the state of Ohio. And they are short-staffed. They do have a schedule to keep. It is nice when you have somebody who can personalize it. But I will say, in the case of New Knoxville, everyone there around New Knoxville, first and foremost, was trying to be very respectful of Meg Loggeman and her players. And it was a difficult task to do that, because being respectful to Meg Loggeman wasn't necessarily the same way as being respectful to her players. Because with Meg Loggeman, she'd suffered a tremendous personal loss. And nobody wanted to be the person that would unleash the emotions that would understandably come with that. But dissimilarly, her players had made winning a state championship their life goal for a long, long time. And there's nothing wrong with them being happy in that moment.
yeah,
There's nothing wrong with them looking at that moment and saying, we prioritized a state championship, and we won this state championship for reasons other than being inspired by a terrible tragedy that happened to our coach. And so also, I think the media and people there didn't want to trivialize what New Knoxville's players had accomplished by attributing it to a terrible tragedy that may have not had any role in them winning a state championship. They were good enough to win a state championship regardless of the terrible emotional circumstances that happened. And so I will just say, from a personal standpoint, it was a very difficult road to navigate, to be respectful of two kind of differing emotions in that moment.
Yeah, there's no perfect way, or there's just it's hard. How do you recognize and
it was very touching.
Separate the emotions in a situation like that at that particular point.
I wish there was a way that everybody could have seen what we saw, which is Meg Loggeman was composed in the post game, happy for her kids, and in the back of the room was her little baby, and I do mean baby, daughter, in the arms of an assistant coach. And then Meg Loggeman took her daughter and walked out. And just as a father, and as a husband, it was just an incredibly touching scene to know that the father of that child, the man she loves, is not there and cannot be there because his life was tragically taken in an accident. And you watch that, and that's something I won't forget seeing for a long, long time. And yet I felt like almost voyeuristic, trying to bring that scene to people who didn't see it. Mm-hmm. There are just some moments sometimes that are private moments and deserve to stay private.
Yeah, I agree. Your what is it the guy used to say? Your ability to exist supersedes other people's need to know or right to know. Your right to exist supersedes their right to know. So thank you for your letter, Janelle. Finally, from Terry McCurdy, a former teammate of mine at Ohio State back in the 70s, who wrote this week to say, writing to thank you for the column about Coach Dick Finn, who was our assistant coach at Ohio State. And he actually was there from 70, I think, to 88 when he left when Bob Todd came and took over the program. He passed away 2 weeks ago. And Terry wrote to say, Coach, thanks for the column about Coach Finn, who passed away last week. I know a lot of us remember him. Thanks for what you did. And I think I speak for a lot of people who remember Dick Finn as being a tough guy to play for, a tough guy sometimes to understand. But the one thing that you did understand when you got away from that is the same thing I said about Jim Hardman. I remember things that I said, I'm never going to let that happen to me again because of Dick Finn. He was that kind of guy. He was very tough at that point when you're 19 years old. To go back to your dorm at night and say, that's a good thing that happened to me today. No, not so much then,
Yeah.
but when you're 49 or 59 or 39 or 30 years down the road, it's funny how the older you get, the smarter you get.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
You've heard that.
Yep.
Everybody's dad tells them that. We get too old quick and too late smart. Well, Dick Finn was the epitome of that as a college baseball coach. And so, Terry, I appreciate hearing from you this week.
We are very much appreciative of Nutter Hardware hosting us tonight in Upper Arlington. If you're in Upper Arlington, even if you're not, make a trip. It's worth the trip. Free popcorn here at the Nutter Hardware store. Awesome Yeti display and steel power tools and all the other power tools you want. Every kind of paint you could possibly want. They've got every paint need met here.
I never would imagine that you can buy a Yeti dog food bowl.
A Yeti
They've
dog
got
bowl.
them.
And they have, these are not engraved. What are these called? These are etched. I don't know.
Etched.
But they're very beautiful Yeti coolers with the Ohio State logo etched
Stainless
in them.
steel.
You'd be the life of the tailgate party with one of those. So Nutter Hardware and rental, and really great rental equipment as well. We want to thank everybody who watched the show tonight. Remember, you can tell people to watch it on the replay if they missed it. The games are Friday and Saturday. We are all over Marion Local, Coldwater, Versailles, and Upper Arlington. Watch the site. We'll have Ohio State, Michigan covered for you as well. Thanks to our friends at visitcanton.com for being the presenting sponsor all season long of the Press Pros Huddle. We'll be back next week to recap the state semifinals and to get you set for a weekend that we've been looking forward to for a long time. Championship weekend in Canton. Click on those visitcanton.com ads. With that,
More importantly, Truman, go to bed.
Truman, go to bed. Everybody have a great